My father smelled like lavender and antiseptic. It's a smell that sticks to your clothes, to your hair, to the inside of your nose, so that even when you step outside for a breath of fresh air, you're still breathing in the sick room. I was wiping his chin with a warm cloth. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. The sunlight was cutting through the blinds in that harsh, unforgiving way that highlights dust motes dancing in the air. Dad was asleep, his chest rising and falling with that rattling rhythm that had become the soundtrack of my life. Shane Stokes' respiration. That's what the hospice nurse called it. I called it the countdown clock. I heard the front door open downstairs. It wasn't a gentle opening. It was the heavy, confident thud of someone who owns the place or thinks they do. Heavy footsteps on the hardwood. Designer loafers. Mark. My brother hadn't been to the house in 6 months. The last time was Christmas, where he stayed for 45 minutes, complained that the house was too warm, ate a plate of ham, and left before dessert because he had a flight to catch to Aspen. I froze. My hand holding the washcloth hovered over Dad's pale, papery cheek. I didn't go down to greet him. I was in my sweatpants, stained with a little bit of Ensure from breakfast, hair in a messy bun that hadn't been washed in 3 days. Mark would be in a suit. He was always in a suit. "Hello," he called out. Not "Hey sis." Not "Dad." Just a generic announcement of presence. I heard him on his phone. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to someone else. I crept to the top of the landing, stepping on the edges of the stairs where the wood didn't creak. "Yeah, I'm at the house now," Mark said. His voice carried. He had that loud, booming projection of a man who is used to people listening to him in boardrooms. "It smells like a hospital in here. God, it's depressing." Pause. Whoever was on the other end said something. "No, she's here somewhere," Mark laughed. A short, sharp bark of a laugh. "Probably sleeping. That's all she does. Look, the point is, the liquidity is tied up until the old man kicks it. But once he does, we're looking at a 4 mil portfolio easy. The house alone is worth 1.5 in this market." My stomach tightened. I felt cold. "Her." Mark scoffed. "Please. She's not going to be a problem. Sarah's been living here rent-free for 4 years, Mike. Rent-free. She has 0 expenses. Dad's pension pays for the groceries, the utilities, everything. Honestly, she's a burden. She's leeching off the estate right now. If anything, she should be paying me rent for my half of the equity she's squatting in." I gripped the banister. My knuckles turned white. Leeching. I thought about last night. I had been up at 1 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4:30 a.m. Dad had hallucinated that the room was on fire. I had to hold him, rocking a 200-pound man who had lost 50 pounds but was still dead weight, whispering to him until he stopped screaming. I had changed his sheets twice because of accidents. I had manually crushed his meds into applesauce because he couldn't swallow pills anymore. I had given up my apartment. My job as a senior logistics manager for a shipping firm. My dating life. My friends. My savings. I was 34 years old and my rent-free life consisted of watching my father die by inches while sleeping on a cot in his hallway so I could hear him breathe. "Yeah," Mark said downstairs, opening the fridge. I heard the clink of a glass. "She thinks she's some kind of martyr. But really, she just couldn't hack it in the real world. This was an easy out for her. Free ride. Anyway, when the split happens, I'm taking my 50% in cash. I'm not keeping the property. I need that capital for the firm's buy-in." He wasn't here to see Dad. He was here to appraise the inventory. I stepped back from the landing. Quietly. I walked back into Dad's room. He was still sleeping, mouth open, looking so fragile that a strong wind could blow him away. I looked at him and then I looked at myself in the mirror on the dresser. Dark circles under my eyes. Gray hairs sprouting at my temples. I looked 10 years older than I was. A leech. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a vase. I sat down in the chair next to Dad's bed. I picked up my phone. And I opened the voice memo app. I could still hear Mark downstairs talking about liquidating assets and trimming the fat. I pressed record. I recorded him for 10 minutes. I recorded him complaining about the clutter of medical supplies. I recorded him telling his friend Mike that Sarah is going to expect a handout, but I'm going to make sure the split is strict. 50-50. She's already eaten into the inheritance enough with these grocery bills. When he finally hung up, I heard him coming up the stairs. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. I dipped the cloth in the warm water again. When Mark walked into the room, I was wiping Dad's forehead. I didn't look up. "Hey," Mark said. He stood in the doorway. He didn't come in. He treated the threshold like a contamination zone. "Hi, Mark," I said. My voice was raspy. I cleared it. "Hi. How is he?" "The same," I said. "Declining. The nurse says maybe a few weeks. Maybe a month." Mark checked his watch. A Rolex Submariner. $12,000. "Right. Well, you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said. I turned to look at him then. I forced a small, tired smile. The kind of smile a beaten dog gives. "Just tired. It's good to see you, Mark." He looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight. "Yeah, well, work is crazy. You know how it is. Mergers." "I know," I said softly. "You're so busy. Dad appreciates you stopping by. Even if he doesn't wake up." "I can only stay a few minutes," he said quickly. "I have a dinner meeting in the city." "Of course." He looked around the room. His eyes landed on the oxygen concentrator humming in the corner. "Do we really need all this machinery? Must be costing a fortune. Medicare covers this, right?" "Most of it," I lied. Medicare covered the rental. They didn't cover the extra supplies, the specialized nutrition, the specific high-grade incontinence pads that didn't give Dad rashes. I paid for those. Out of my savings. "Good," Mark said. "We need to preserve the principle. For Dad's sake." "For Dad's sake," I echoed. He left 4 minutes later. He didn't touch Dad. He didn't say goodbye to him. He just nodded at me, checked his watch again, and walked out. I watched his BMW back out of the driveway from the window. The silence rushed back into the house. It was heavy, oppressive. But for the first time in 4 years, inside that silence, I didn't feel despair. I felt clarity. I walked over to the desk in the corner of the room. It was piled high with paperwork. Medical directives. Insurance forms. DNR orders. I pulled out a fresh legal pad. Mark thought I was stupid. He thought I couldn't hack it, Sarah. He forgot that before I was a caregiver, I was a logistics manager. My job was tracking millions of dollars of inventory across 3 continents. My job was details. My job was efficiency. My job was making sure that if a single shipping container went missing, someone paid for it. I uncapped a pen. Date, October 14th. Visitor, Mark. Duration of visit, 14 minutes. Contribution to care, 0. Remarks. Called me a leech. Discussed liquidating the house before DOD, date of death. I looked at the notepad. It wasn't enough. Anger wasn't a strategy. I needed a contract. Dad woke up an hour later. It was one of his good windows. With Lewy body dementia, you get these moments of crystal clarity sandwiched between days of fog. He looked at me and his eyes were blue and sharp. "Sarah," he rasped. "I'm here, Dad." I brought the water cup to his lips. "Straw. Drink." He drank. He looked at the door. "Mark." "He was here," I said. "He had to leave. Work." Dad sighed. It was a sound of deep, ancient disappointment. "He's busy." "Yeah," I said. "Dad, we need to talk. While you're awake." "About the end?" "No," I said. "About the middle. About right now. Do you trust me?" "With my life," he whispered. "I need to protect us," I said. Mark is planning things. Financial things. And I need to make sure that the care I'm giving you is recognized. Legally." Dad looked at me. He knew Mark. He loved him, but he knew him. He knew Mark was the shark he had raised to eat other fish. He just never thought the shark would eat the family. "What do you need?" Dad asked. "I need you to hire me," I said. The next day I didn't call Mark. I called Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson was Dad's estate attorney. He was 80 years old, wore suspenders, and hated Mark. He hated Mark because 2 years ago, Mark had called him a dinosaur to his face and tried to get Dad to switch to a more aggressive, firm. When Mr. Henderson arrived, I made him tea. We sat in the kitchen. I played him the recording from the voice memo. Mr. Henderson listened. He stared at the teapot. His jaw tightened. "Leech," Henderson repeated. The word sounded like a curse in his mouth. "He thinks I'm living the high life," I said. "He thinks this is a vacation." He's going to push for an immediate sale the second your father passes, Henderson said. He'll try to force an eviction. He can do it too. As co-executor, he can claim you're damaging the asset value by remaining in the property. I know, I said. So we changed the terms. I pushed a folder across the table. Inside was a breakdown of average costs for 24-hour private skilled nursing in our state. The going rate for a live-in LPN is $65 an hour, I said. For an RN it's $90. I'm doing the work of both. Plus the housekeeping. Plus the administration. You want a salary? Henderson asked. No, I said. I don't want a salary. There's no cash to pay it right now. I want a debt. Henderson's eyes lit up. He leaned forward. The dinosaur woke up. A deferred compensation agreement, he murmured. Contingent on the estate settlement. Exactly, I said. A caregiver contract. Retroactive to the day I moved in, which you can verify with the change of address forms 4 years ago. And continuing until the moment of death. We bill hourly. 24 hours a day. 24 hours? Henderson raised an eyebrow. The court might challenge that. They'll say you slept. I don't sleep, I said flatly. I am on call. If he chokes at 3 a.m. I am there. If the fire alarm goes off I am there. That is, engaged to wait time under labor laws. It's billable. Henderson smiled. It was a shark smile, but the good kind. The kind that protects the reef. We'll set the rate at $100 an hour, Henderson said. For skilled care, facility management, and fiduciary services. It's high but defensible given the 24/7 nature and the lack of agency overhead. We'll draft it as a promissory note secured by the estate. Can Mark overturn it? Not if your father signs it while competent, Henderson said. And today, he seems very competent. We went upstairs. Dad was sitting up. He listened to Henderson explain it. Mark wants to sell the house? Dad asked. His voice was weak but angry. Pie house. He wants the cash, Frank, Henderson said gently. And he thinks Sarah is stealing from you. Dad looked at me. Tears welled in his eyes. You gave up everything, Sarah. It's okay, Dad. No, he said. It's not. Give me the pen. Dad signed. His hand shook but the signature was there. Franklin D. Miller. Henderson notarized it on the spot. He stamped it with a heavy, satisfying thud. One more thing, I said to Henderson as he packed up his briefcase. Mark doesn't know about this. Not a word. Attorney-client privilege, Henderson winked. But Sarah. Yes. Keep a log. A detailed one. If we go to court we need to prove every single hour. Don't worry, I said. I'm a logistics manager. That night I started the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet became my Bible. I didn't just log hours. I logged suffering. November 2nd, 3 o'clock. Event. Patient incontinence, solid. Action. Bed strip, patient shower, redressing laundry. Duration. 90 minutes. Notes. Patient confused, combative. Scratched my arm. Bleeding. I took a picture of the scratch on my arm. I uploaded it to a cloud folder named Receipts. Mark called 3 days later. Hey, he said. I'm sending over a realtor next week. Just to look at the bones of the place. Get a prelim valuation. My heart hammered but I kept my voice flat, dull. Grey rock. Be the boring, tired sister. Oh, I said. Is that okay? Dad is really sick right now, Mark. It's just a walkthrough, Sarah. Don't be dramatic. You don't even have to clean. Actually, don't clean. They need to see the potential for renovation. Just let them in. Hey, I said. Hey, Mark. Whatever you say. And hey, he added. Mom's jewelry. Is it still in the safe? Yes. Good. Don't touch it. That's part of the estate inventory. I have a list. I haven't touched anything, I said. I just want Dad to be comfortable. Yeah. Just open the door for the realtor on Thursday at 10. When the realtor came, I played the part perfectly. I wore my baggiest sweatpants. I didn't brush my hair. I looked exhausted. I was exhausted but I amplified it. Shuffled. I mumbled. The realtor, a woman named Janice with perfect teeth, looked at me with pity. And disgust. Ideally, Janice whispered into her phone as she walked through the dining room. We'd gut the kitchen. And obviously the smell, we'd need to replace the carpets. She stepped over a pile of medical pads I had intentionally left in the hallway. It's a teardown in spirit, she laughed. But the lot is gold. I recorded her too. I sent the recording to Henderson. Evidence of hostile intent regarding the primary residence, I typed. Months passed. The winter was brutal. The heating bill skyrocketed. Mark emailed me. Subject, utilities. Sarah, I noticed the gas bill is $400 this month. That's absurd. Turn the thermostat down. Dad is under blankets anyway. We need to stop bleeding cash. I didn't reply to the email. Instead I printed it. I added it to the binder. Then I replied, okay Mark. I'll turn it down to 65. I didn't turn it down. I turned it up to 72. I paid the difference out of my own dwindling savings account. I kept the receipts. Item, heating cost differential. Paid by claimant. Reason, defendant instructed to freeze the terminally ill patient. I was building a wall. Brick by brick. Receipt by receipt. Christmas came. Mark sent a fruit basket. He didn't visit. Ski trip with the new girlfriend, he texted. Give Dad a hug for me. I sat by Dad's bed on Christmas Eve. We watched It's a Wonderful Life. Dad couldn't speak much anymore. The aphasia had set in. He just pointed at the screen and smiled. You're a good girl, he managed to say. Good. I love you, Dad. Mark, he asked. He's away, I said. Dad closed his eyes. He doesn't know. Doesn't know what? How hard, Dad whispered. How hard it is. No, I said, stroking his hand. But he's going to learn. By February the money was getting tight. Really tight. Dad's pension covered the basics, but the specialized care was expensive. I needed a new Hoyer lift because my back was giving out from lifting him. The insurance denied it. I called Mark. Mark, I need $1,500, I said. For a lift. To get Dad out of bed. What? Mark snapped. Why? Just lift him. He weighs like nothing. He's dead weight, Mark. I can't do it. I hurt my back. Listen, Sarah, Mark sighed. I'm tapped out right now. My liquidity is all in the market. And honestly, if you can't lift him, maybe it's time for a state home. The cheap ones. They have lifts. A state home. The ones that smelled like urine and despair. The ones where patients got bed sores that ate down to the bone. No, I said. No state home. Then figure it out, Mark said. You're living there for free. Sell some of your stuff. Or get a part-time job. You're just sitting there all day. I stared at the phone. Event. Refusal of medical necessity funds. Quote, just lift him. I bought the lift on my credit card. I maxed it out. 24% APR. I added the interest to the invoice. Dad died on a rainy Tuesday in April. It was peaceful. I was holding his hand. He took a breath and then he didn't take another one. The silence that followed wasn't like the silence when Mark left. It was a holy silence. A final silence. I sat with him for an hour. I washed his face one last time. I combed his hair. I told him it was okay to go. Then I called the hospice nurse. She came, pronounced him dead. Then I called Mark. He's gone, I said. Oh, Mark said. There was a pause. I'm sorry, Sarah. For a second I heard a crack in his armor. A tiny bit of humanity. Yeah, I said. Okay, look, Mark said, the business voice returning instantly. Don't call the funeral home yet. I know a guy who gives a discount. And Sarah? Secure the house. Lock everything. I'll be there tomorrow with the locksmith. The locksmith? Yeah. We need to secure the assets. I don't want. Well, we need to make sure nothing walks away. You understand. He was evicting me. Before the body was cold. I understand, I said. I'll be there at 9 a.m., he said. Have your stuff packed. You can stay in the guest room for a few days until the funeral, but then we need to stage the place. Okay, Mark. I hung up. I didn't pack a bag. I packed everything. I called the movers. I had prearranged this. Code red, I told the dispatcher. They were there in an hour. I took my clothes. My books. My laptop. The binder. The printer. I took the pictures of Mom and Dad. I took the quilt Mom made. I left the furniture. I left the TV. I left the dining set. I left the house spotless. I scrubbed the floors. I vacuumed the carpets. I wanted him to see exactly what he was getting. A pristine, empty house. And on the kitchen counter I left a single key. I drove to a motel 6 towns away. I turned off my phone. The next morning at 9:05 a.m. I turned my phone on. 37 missed calls from Mark. 12 texts. Mark, where the hell are you? Mark, why are the locks changed? I hadn't changed them, he just couldn't work the sticky front door because he never visited. Mark, why is the house empty? Did you steal the silver? Mark, call me. I texted him back once. Me, I moved out. Like you wanted. House is yours to secure. Funeral arrangements are pending. Talk to Mr. Henderson. Then I blocked him for 24 hours. I needed to sleep. For the first time in 4 years I slept for 12 hours straight. I didn't wake up to listen for breathing. I didn't wake up to check a monitor. I woke up and the silence was mine. The funeral was 3 days later. It was awkward. Mark played the grieving son perfectly. He wore a black Armani suit. He cried during the eulogy. A eulogy he clearly wrote on the plane, full of generic platitudes about Dad the provider and Dad the pillar of strength. He didn't mention the diapers. He didn't mention the dementia. He mentioned the time Dad took him fishing in 1998. I stood in the back. I wore a simple black dress. I didn't speak. People came up to me. You look tired, Sarah, they said. At least now you can rest. At least now you can get your life back. Mark cornered me at the reception. You pulled a disappearing act, he hissed, gripping my arm a little too hard. Do you know how bad that looked? Me having to explain why my sister wasn't at the house. I gave you what you wanted, I said calmly. The house is empty. It's ready for your realtor. Damn right it is, he said. We got an offer already. A flipper. Gish. We close in 30 days. Probate should be fast. Henderson says the will reading is next Thursday. Okay. I'm going to be generous, Sarah, Mark said, lowering his voice. I know you're broke. I'm going to let you have the old station wagon. And maybe 10 grand off the top for moving expenses. Before the split. He thought he was being a saint. Thank you, Mark, I said. That's very calculated of you. I'm a numbers guy, he shrugged. It's just business. Yes, I said. It is. The lawyer's office smelled of mahogany and old paper. Mr. Henderson sat behind his massive desk, looking like a judge presiding over a murder trial. Mark sat on the leather sofa, legs crossed, scrolling on his phone. He had a calculator app open on his iPad, which was resting on the coffee table. I sat in the wingback chair opposite him. I had a folder in my lap. A thick red folder. Shall we begin? Henderson asked. Let's get to it, Mark said, putting his phone away. I have a flight at 5. Very well, Henderson said. He put on his reading glasses. The Last Will and Testament of Franklin D. Miller. He read the standard boilerplate. Revocation of prior wills. Payment of debts. Article 4, Henderson read. Distribution of assets. Mark leaned forward. Here we go. The entirety of the estate, including the property at 124 Maple Drive, all investment accounts and personal property, is to be liquidated and the proceeds divided equally between my 2 children, Mark Franklin Miller and Sarah and Miller. Mark slapped his knee. Boom. 50-50. Just like I said. Okay, Henderson, what's the total valuation? The total valuation of the estate, Henderson said, looking at a sheet, is approximately $4.2 million. Mark grinned. He actually pumped his fist. 2.1 each. Sir, you're rich. Don't blow it all on whatever it is you do. However, Henderson said. His voice dropped an octave. It was the voice of doom. The distribution is subject to the settlement of all outstanding debts and liens against the estate. Yeah, Mark waved his hand. Credit cards, utility bills. What is it? 5 grand? 10. There is one significant creditor claim, Henderson said. A secured promissory note filed by a service provider. Mark frowned. Service provider? Dad didn't have any debts. I checked his credit. This debt was private, Henderson said. It is for skilled nursing, hospice care, facility management, and fiduciary services rendered over a period of 48 months. Mark looked at me. Then he looked at Henderson. What are you talking about? Sarah took care of him. Exactly, Henderson said. He pulled a document out of a file. It was the contract. He slid it across the desk toward Mark. On October 15th, your father entered into a binding caregiver agreement with Sarah Miller. The agreement stipulates an hourly rate of $100 for 24-hour monitoring and care. Mark picked up the paper. His hands started to shake. This is a joke. Dad was senile. He couldn't sign this. We have a video of the signing, Henderson said calmly. And a competency evaluation from his neurologist dated the same day. It is ironclad, Mark. Mark's face went red. $100 an hour? That's extortion. It's actually below market rate for 24/7 agency care, Henderson said. Now let's look at the invoice. I opened my red folder. I pulled out the summary sheet. I slid it onto the table next to Mark's iPad. Total hours billed, I read aloud. My voice was steady. 35,040 hours. Covering 4 years. You can't bill for sleeping. Mark screamed. He stood up. You can't bill for living in my house. Engaged to wait, Henderson interjected. Department of Labor standard. Sarah was on call every second of every day. She was not free to leave. She was not free to work another job. She was the exclusive provider of life-sustaining care. The math, Mark stammered. He looked at his calculator. He punched in the numbers. 35,000 times 100. His face drained of color. He looked like he was going to vomit. 3.5 million, he whispered. $3,504,000 to be exact, I said. Plus expenses. The Hoyer lift. The specialized food. The heating bill you refused to pay. Total claim, $3,550,000. That's the whole liquid estate, Mark said. His voice cracked. That's all the cash. Correct, Henderson said. The estate pays the debt first. Sarah receives a check for $3.55 million. The remaining assets, roughly $650,000, mostly the equity in the house, will then be split 50/50ths. Mark sank back onto the sofa. So I get $325,000, Henderson said. And she gets. Mark pointed a shaking finger at me. She gets her earnings, Henderson said. Plus her half of the remainder. Roughly $3.8 million total. Mark looked at me. His eyes were wide, panicked. The arrogance was gone. The finance bro facade had crumbled. Sarah, he pleaded. You can't do this. But I leveraged my position. I borrowed against my expected inheritance. I bought into the partnership. If I don't come up with $2 million by next week, I'm defaulted. I'll lose everything. My condo, my car, my job. I looked at him. I thought about the night Dad hallucinated the fire. I thought about the diapers. I thought about the leech comment. I thought about the 14-minute visit. You're a numbers guy, Mark, I said softly. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. It's just business. Mark sued, of course. He spent the next 6 months trying to invalidate the contract. He called me a fraud. He called Dad incompetent. He dragged our family name through the mud in probate court. But Henderson had been thorough. The logbook. The receipts. The video. The photos of the bedsores that didn't happen because I turned Dad every 2 hours. The judge looked at my spreadsheet. It was 400 pages long. Mr. Miller, the judge said to Mark during the final hearing. Your sister provided care that would have cost the estate $5 million if you had hired an agency. She saved the estate money. She is entitled to her compensation. Mark lost. He had to pay my legal fees out of his $325,000 share. By the time it was over, Mark was broken. His firm fired him for the leverage risk. His girlfriend left him when the Aspen trips stopped. He moved into a small apartment in Jersey City. We don't speak. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts. I bought a small place on the coast of Maine. It has a garden. It has a view of the ocean. It has silence. I don't have to listen for breathing anymore. I don't have to check a monitor. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. out of habit. My heart races thinking I missed a dose of medication. But then I hear the waves crashing against the rocks. I smell the salt air, not bleach and sickness. I roll over. I pull the duvet up. I earned this sleep. Every single hour of it. By the time it was over, Mark was broken. His firm fired him for the leverage risk. His girlfriend left him when the Aspen trips stopped. He moved into a small apartment in Jersey City. We don't speak. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts. I bought a small place on the coast of Maine. It has a garden. It has a view of the ocean. It has silence. I don't have to listen for breathing anymore. I don't have to check a monitor. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. out of habit. My heart races thinking I missed a dose of medication. But then I hear the waves crashing against the rocks. I smell the salt air, not bleach and sickness. I roll over. I pull the duvet up. I earned this sleep. Every single hour of it.